I am on the line now with Douglas Rushkoff. We're going to talk about his new book, Program or Be Programmed, and we'll talk a little bit about where you can get that book and the choices he made to get that book out. But before that, we're going to talk a little bit about this gentleman's background. Douglas, how are you today?
I'm okay.
You've written about religion. You've been recognized as a social media guru for many years. You've been involved in comic books. You've had a comic book series, Testament. You've had documentaries. Briefly, how did you get started on this path of yours, this fascinating path of the last few decades?
I guess I originally got started
As a theater director, I was really directing plays since I was about 10 or 11 years old. And I found it, fun and personally rewarding. But then as I became an adult, as I, got out of grad school and wanted to direct plays in the real world, I kind of realized that the audience for these things were very small. It was, either, wealthy suburbanites just looking to be, congratulated for their value systems, or, a very thin band of the counterculture, the artsy community. It just didn't seem like a way to have an impact. I felt a little bit like I was having the reverse effect. And meanwhile, all of these just great and strange things were happening in multimedia and the very beginning of computer games and networking and all of that stuff. And I just wanted to see what was going on there. And after my first few online, computer-type experiences, I really saw in this stuff the answer to what I was looking for in the theater. In other words, what kind of experience can you give people that will make them see the world in a completely new way? What will wake them up to the point where they'll realize that the way they've been looking at the world is just one choice, and that there were many other alternatives open to them all the time. I care less about which perspective is right or wrong, or accepted
or out of favor. And simply,
do people understand that they have a perspective at all, that they're in a particular reality tunnel? So I got involved in the very early Internet days, and I was really interested in drawing connections between the many different things that were happening in culture, from fantasy role-playing and rave and the psychedelic revival to, the beginnings of hypertext and personal computers and fractals and chaos math. And I saw it all as part of the same sort of cultural or almost evolutionary realization that we are designing the world that we're living in, that human beings are becoming involved. They're intervening in their own evolution. And I ended up, I wrote one book saying, look what's happening, look what's about to happen. And people seemed resistant to the idea or incapable of getting it if they didn't already know it. So the rest of the books I've written were really designed to help people kind of break free of the social constructs or the reality constructs they're living under, to help people see that, that a lot of what they're accepting as given circumstances are actually social constructions, that they're the creations of people. Whether it's our religions or our monetary systems or the street plan of our cities, these were all the results of choices made by people. They're not just,
something from God. And that's why I even wrote one about religion. But all the comics, all the documentaries, all the non-fiction books are really saying that same thing, just in a number of different ways. And then, finally, this last book is returning to the original again, where I'm saying,
this is the place where that insight, at least for me, this is the place where that insight came from. But it's amazing to me that now it seems like almost the last place to expect people to find this sensibility, that with technology, almost more than anywhere else now, people are willing to accept the devices and the programs they're given as if there's no code and no decisions being made on their behalf by people who may or may not have their best interests at heart.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from with that because it's very true of so many things that people accept, we'll say corporations, and this was the subject of your last book, the idea is that some things, big corporations employing people, as if that has always been the case and will always be the case. Whereas if you look a bit bigger and wider and broader, that's not the case at all. Speaking of the net and your early involvement with it, this was the late early 80s, early 90s. Your first book, and you've written, I think, 10 books at this stage, was actually rejected or held back by a publisher who believed that by the time it actually hit the shelves, the net phenomenon, like CB radio, would be dead and gone.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. And this
That
was
was back in
1993?
91. I wrote the book. It got cancelled in 92.
because they thought the net would be over by 93. And this was a book that was only, marginally about the net anyway. But that's they buy books. The book industry was, I guess, corporate even when I started. Around that time, and they were buying things based on, kind of these ridiculous sales ideas. They were trying to catch trends, and they really were incapable of, making decisions based on anything real.
And to decide to do something quite radical with this book, because you've gone with the company called OR Books, who are a smaller independent company. It's given you a much more intimate relationship with your publisher, and that's a very admirable. Talk about that for a minute. You've gone a route which gets the book out quicker and at less cost. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. People. Partly because of the way the net is, and the net gets so extreme so fast. I see pieces coming out now saying Rushkoff abandons publishing industry. Rushkoff says publishing is dead, and it's really not. I know what it's like to write a book with a major corporate publisher. And there's good things and bad things about it. The good thing is you get a lot of money up front to write the book. The bad part is that when you finish the book, you will spend a year or two waiting for them to publish it. And most of the reasons why it takes that long have nothing to do with making the book better, but have much more to do with forming to a really old, there's a lot of middlemen involved, each who want to get paid, from the distributor to the distributor's distributor to the retail. You end up just waiting so long that the ideas
for maybe something that was going to happen
ends up being something that already happened by the time the book comes out. So the ideas can go stale. And even a classic book, that can happen because you kind of want to be speaking to people where they're at that moment. And even if you're doing a classic text that matters to some extent, but then if you're going to be trying to write about technology and our relationship to
technology, if you want to enter into a conversation about what's happening now, you end up writing a book today that comes out 2 years from now. So I really wanted to shorten that.
And the other thing is that a lot of my readers are not that wealthy. I'm not writing for, business. I'm writing for people. So while, the marketing directors can buy high-priced pro-business books for their, employees to teach them how to do whatever it is they do, it's much harder for people who are, say, looking to form an alternative, community structure, looking to understand technology for themselves, to pay $30 for a new book, and it takes a year until it comes out in paperback. So this was really a way for me to, release a book for $16 instead of $30, make more per book, and get it out a month after it was written rather than 2 years. And I really do believe that if these technologies are going to deliver the promise that they have, it's to allow us to engage in a true peer-to-peer economy. That's what we've got. If people are willing to search, for Rushkoff or for Program or Be Programmed in the Google window rather than the Amazon or the Borders or the Waterstones window, then I get to sell them books directly and cheaper. If they really, really need Amazon, and we'll find out, if they really, really need a retailer, then they can pay twice the money